Hi guys, well we are coming straight into the new year with a review of the new Silverstone RVX01. So the Raven series has been quite a big deal for Silverstone, having served the gaming community for many years. Now the Raven X series has only just been unveiled and it's set to adopt key characteristics which we've become accustomed to, but the main difference really is that the cases within the series are going to arrive with an entry-level price tag. So RVX01 kickstarts Raven X, and although it is quite a small tower, it can still accommodate ATX size configurations. This case also brings with it that renowned 90-degree motherboard tray and vertically driven cooling. Now RVX01 arrives on the shelf with a price tag of £65 in the UK and $80 if you're over in the States, so slightly above entry level but still very much affordable, and it might be of interest to you guys who are perhaps wanting to keep things nice and compact. So with that introduction now out of the way, let's crack on and begin. Right guys, well let's start at the very front of RVX01. So we have this plastic fascia here which you can tell is closed off, and it has no door, which alludes to the omission of any 5¼ inch optical support. So although this panel is largely closed off, there are some areas there for ventilation to assist with the cooling. Now this front panel has that Raven emblem there embossed onto it, and in the centre there we have this red LED which lights up once the system is powered up. Now this front panel does detach from the chassis with a firm pull, and once removed you can see those two LEDs, and just behind the LEDs there is a section of perforated mesh and the mounting holes there for installing a 120mm fan at the front. Now the front panel connectivity is located at the top of this fascia, and it consists of a power button, a USB 3 port, headphone and microphone jacks, another USB 3 port, a reset button with an activity LED. So not a great deal there included, but we're really glad that Silverstone has decided to use USB 3 instead of the USB 2 in this instance. Further back from these ports we have a top panel which is plastic, and it has plenty of perforated mesh for ventilation. Now underneath this panel we have the rear I/O ports, so all of your USB and all of your graphics card ports, etc. So it's really necessary there to have plenty of ventilation and plenty of air circulation. Now towards the back this panel has a large gap there so that you can feed any of your cables through, and later on we're going to kind of explore the underside of this top section in a bit more detail. Over at the back of RVX01 we have quite a departure really from the traditional features that you would find on a tower design. We obviously have that area at the very top there for the cabling, but there are also some ventilation for the power supply and then not a lot else. So the lower section is quite plain, but at the bottom there we have the detachable dust filter for the bottom mounted cooling fans. Now there are different versions of this case available. We have the non-windowed version and the model which has the red feet. So both side panels here are solid and without any notable features. So to detach those panels it's necessary really to detach that top panel first of all, and then we have access there to the screws which fix the panels onto the chassis. Okay, so detaching those panels we have the first indication really of that rotated motherboard tray, which is also on the reverse side to the customary tower design. The idea being that positive airflow will be directed from the bottom in a vertical format, driving unwanted heat out through the top. And as you can see there, the internals are all coated black, and that tray can house up to ATX size motherboard, which is actually quite surprising when you think about it, when you think how compact and how small RVX01 really is. Okay, after detaching that top panel then, we can now have a look at what's underneath. So as you can see here, this top section is kind of what you would expect at the very back of a traditional tower design. All of the input-output ports are found here. So over on the left side we have a series of 7 PCI covers. Unfortunately though, these are all disposable except for just one of the covers. So once you have removed the cover, you cannot reuse them again, which is kind of disappointing. Further on we have the mounting holes there for installing a 120mm fan, and aligning that fan as an exhaust would probably be the best course of action to kind of assist with the current cooling configuration. And then over on the far right we have the power supply, and again the back end of that unit is going to be facing the top of the case and heat will be driven upwards. Now that power supply works with the ventilation holes at the back of RVX01. The power supply will be pulling in cool air from the back of the chassis. The only thing missing though is a dust filter. Moving into the main area, there's a front cooling fan placement there that supports a 120mm fan, but given the default cooling configuration, it's kind of unlikely that adding a fan will dramatically improve those temperatures, though if you do have M.2 drives on your board, it might come in handy. Now at the bottom of RVX01 is the signature design to which Silverstone are well known for. This bottom section here houses a trio of 120mm air penetrators, which as we've mentioned will remain the primary source for cooling within the chassis. These fans are highly regarded and offer great performance, as you'll see in the full review over on Vortez.net. The only criticism that we have is that the insulation on these cables are black, yellow and red, and when you have such cables inside an all black interior it can look kind of messy, so some sleeving there would have been much appreciated to keep things consistent. And then finally towards the back of the chassis we have this storage cage, and this cage can accommodate two 2.5 inch or 3.5 inch drives. The 2.5 inch drive requires one of these brackets, while a 3.5 inch drive simply screws into the cage. RVX01 also has the added bonus of being able to attach two 2.5 inch drives, such as this SSD here, into this lower section. The only thing is, trying to get those screws lined up can be kind of tricky, as you have to attach them from the other side and there isn't a great deal of space. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at the clearance limitations inside RVX01, as this is going to give you guys a bit of an idea of what hardware will fit inside the chassis. So first up, we've got the CPU cooler, and there is approximately 162mm of clearance for the total height. We've got installed the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo, and this is around 159mm. As you can see here how tight things are, but it just about fits inside. Looking at the graphics card area, cards will obviously sit in a vertical orientation, so there is approximately 340mm of space, so this should cover quite a range of different cards, and since there's no cages at the very front of the case, there is also space there for multi-GPU support. Behind the motherboard tray there is very little space at all really. The small gap there between the back of the tray and the side panel measures around 10mm, which doesn't really provide you with much opportunity to route those cables through. So instead you're going to need to take a bit of extra care with the cable management. It can be quite tricky. Right guys, well, to finish things off, we're just going to give you a bit of an idea of what you can expect for the noise levels from RVX01. So we've already got the system powered up. Those air penetrators at the very bottom there are already spinning. And we're just going to take our microphone off and give you an idea of what you can expect. Right guys, well that is new RVX01 from Silverstone, so quite an interesting case really for that first installment inside the new Raven X series. This case brings with it some of those attributes which are really synonymous with that Raven series. Features which we've seen on previous cases: aggressive styling there at the front and also other areas of the case, 90-degree motherboard tray, and of course those air penetrators at the very bottom of the chassis. Those are of course the signature features which remain at the very foundation of this case, but it's quite remarkable really how much hardware you can actually fit inside the case inside such a compact arrangement. There are however a few little areas which could be improved just to make life a little bit easier. The installation is somewhat tricky with such tight dimensions of various obstacles in the way. It would have been really ideal if Silverstone had added just a little bit more to the width of the chassis to create a little bit more space behind that motherboard for the cable management. And although this case is regarded entry level, at the stated price tag we do at the very least expect reusable PCI covers, and so implementing disposable covers is quite an unwise decision. And also just to mention, the fan cables are quite short and we had to actually use extenders in order to reach the headers on our motherboard. And so that's just something which you need to bear in mind. So guys, if you are looking for the cooling performance for this particular review, please head over to the full review, which is going to be on the screen and also in the description. Thanks very much for taking the time out to watch today's video. If you did like it, then please give it a thumbs up. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you guys in the next video.